Now, the Lake Turkana wind power project aims to provide at least 310 megawatts of reliable low-cost wind power to the Kenya national grid, equivalent to approximately 20% of the current installed electricity generating capacity. Now, the project is of significant strategic benefits to Kenya, and at 70 billion shillings will be the largest single private investment in Kenya's history. This forms the basis of our conversation tonight, as well as some key issues affecting electricity consumers in the country. And now to introduce my guest, Engineer Joseph Njoroge, Principal Secretary, Ministry of Energy. Thank you so much for being on the show tonight, sir. And Mugo Kibati, Chairman, Lake Turkana Wind Power Project. Of course, and I understand your concerns about the fact that we want to quickly rush into matters electricity because it's a consumer issue, and we'd like the PS to speak to our consumers, to electricity consumers tonight. And of course, we saw the headlines this morning. Kenya Power had, planned to increase the cost of energy, but ERC and the ministry sort of quashed that particular plan. Perhaps you can just tell us, what informed that decision from a government point of view.
Well, Terry, we have been working on a program to reduce the cost of power, which is informed by the zeal and the desire to industrialize our country. We would want to be seeing more foreign direct investments in the area of industries, manufacturing plants, and we can't do that if we continue having expensive power. More importantly, Kenya Power will be able to get more revenues and even be able to do better in terms of their financial sustainability by selling more units. So if we are able to open up more industries, more manufacturing plants, we increase the demand, the unit sales increases, and eventually their profitability is increased. So it's a question of what comes first, and we would want first to reduce the cost of power, get more industries on board.
Does that mean that Kenya Power, which is the government, is contradicting with it, with the government itself in that sense?
No, it is not really contradicting. It is a requirement, and Kenya Power also has to take care of its shareholders. And since the review is supposed to be done on 3-year basis, and by the way, the review does not mean that the cost has to go up. The review can be done and may be done, but the cost may still remain where it is, or even be reduced based on the revenue requirements of the various stakeholders in the sector.
But, because you are government and you're here tonight, we must ask you, why does Kenya Power feel the need to transfer, they blame that on operation costs as well as the expansion, yet, we know the hydros are up, we know geothermal is in, which has brought the cost of power down, and the fuel, generally, from a commodity point of view, has come down. So,
no, I don't think that is the reasoning behind their request to have the tariff reviewed. There are many more activities that Kenya Power has to undertake, besides, of course, the purchasing of power. When we talk about the hydro, the enhanced hydro generation, the geothermal generation, that addresses only one component of the variables that add up to determining the tariff or the cost that Kenya Power needs to incur so that they can be able to serve Kenyans with electricity. So yes, indeed, the uptake of hydro is much more the uptake of geothermal, and that is what has seen the current reduction of tariff, which is on the average about 25 to 30%, depending on the various category of customers. That reduction is informed by mainly the geothermal, which we put into the grid about 1.5 years ago, and the current very good rains have added up to uptick of sufficient hydropower and therefore mitigate the use of thermal.
All right. Let's shift the conversation now and rope in Mugo to the conversation, who heavily complained before we started the bulletin that would focus on other issues other than the Lake Turkana wind power project. But it is a celebrated project, 310 megawatts, quite ambitious, so to speak. What's the latest update on where the project is?
Well, first let me say that I am just as interested in the issues that have been elucidated very well by the PS. I spent a lot of time in my past life working on some of these issues, and Lake Turkana actually will help further ease the burden on consumers, because it is we expect to, when the time comes, to finally deliver power at about 7.52 euro cents, which is very good for the wind category of generated energy. So I do want to concur with the PS that the overall goal to industrialize this country, we need ample amounts of inexpensive, reliable energy.
All right.
And go ahead.
How much energy do we expect in the first phase?
So it's very simple, two phases. At the end of this year, we expect the first 70 megawatts to be complete, and by mid next year, by June next year, we expect the full complement of 310 megawatts, representing about 18% of installed power capacity today. Of course, with geothermal energy coming up and other sources coming up, that changes every day. But as of today, that would constitute about 18%.
All right, PS, let's talk about the end of this year, which we expect at least 70 more megawatts onto the national grid. How do you see that impacting the cost of energy, at least to the consumer level?
Well, the tariff for wheat, as Paul has alluded, is 7.52 euro cents, which is about 9 US cents with the current rates, and that is very a good generation tariff. Our generation tariff, particularly on the new plants, ranges from about 8. That's the best we get from geothermal, all the way up to 12 US cents. So the Lake Turkana is one of those power plants which will be at what we normally call the highest or the first level of merit when we want to dispatch the power plants. Given, of course, the fact that the wind power also is going to prevail at certain times of the day, not all the times. And we are very lucky to be having quite a significant amount of hydro, so be able to complementary use both hydro and wind. We reckon that wind is appearing certain times, especially during the peak time, which is from about 6:30 to about 10 o'clock. So be able to get quite some component of our mix derived from the wind, and therefore basically saying that it is going to add up to our energy mix. Our current energy mix is mainly in form of geothermal, hydro, and a bit of thermal. We are not using a lot of thermal, and therefore the wind brings in a new composition within that mix and gives us more options, especially in the event, for example, we had a challenge with the rainfall, and therefore we will not be able to have as much hydro as we have. Then we'll be able to make complementarity with that wind.
All right.
Yes.
Let's talk about the evacuation. What is the current evacuation plan or the progress of evacuation from Turkana?
Well, I think it's important to distinguish the two components of this project. We are handling the generation side,
yes,
which is the actual wind farm.
Of course.
And I do want to, before I go back to the evacuation, I do want to say that it's true. Wind is not always available. But the beauty of the location of Marsabit County and the Lake Turkana wind corridor is that it is probably one of the best corridors globally in terms of availability of wind power. We've had challenges putting up the turbines, because when you're putting up the turbines, you need periods of low wind gusts, and it is actually quite challenging to come across those. So that's one of the beauties of the site itself. When it comes to evacuation, so we're doing the generation. Ketraku is our partner. Ketako, of course, is parastatal under the Ministry of Energy, under the PS there, and they have the responsibility of putting up the transmission line that will run all the way from our site in Marsabit County to Suswo, about 428 kilometers, and we've been working in tandem with the Ministry of Energy to make sure that by the time we have our project ready, and especially by mid next year, that the transmission line will be available. And I think the PS, of course, will speak more about this, but one of the side benefits of Lake Turkana wind power is the transmission line itself, because it will cover areas that previously were not traversed by the national grid.
All right, we've had other wind power projects, and notably Kinangop Wind, which had to bail out due to challenges in acquisition of land, and this has become quite an issue. You know, we saw that with SGR. It has also been mentioned as a key issue into how Kenya lost the pipeline deal with Uganda. How much is land an issue? And then we'll also get it from you when it comes to the Turkana Power Project.
Well, yes, it is true. I think the expectations of Kenyans with regard to land has gone up, and yes, Kinangop had issues of land, but the land in Kinangop was mainly for individual farmers. It was a contract between the company that was putting up the turbines and the individual farmers. I think the land in Lake Turkana is different. It's between the county government and the investor. So
just to clarify, have Kinangop Wind already written formally to you to say they're bailing out?
Well, the investor has written, but there has been a lot of work done between the ministry, the investor, the owners of the land, the leadership of Nyandarua County, and I do know that at the moment almost 90% of the farmers have signed up to allow the turbines to be installed. We would want that process to go on after doing all the much work that we have done. We believe it's a very good project for the farmers themselves, for the Nyandarua County, and of course for Kenya, because the power plant is very close to Nairobi, and this is where we have got our main demand of power. And the closer you are to the main demand, the better in terms of reduced losses, because every time you evacuate and transport power, there are losses within the system, and therefore the nearer you are to the demand, the better you are in terms of efficiency of that generated power with regard to how much is able to be utilized by the consumers. So we are happy, and we do expect that because we have solved most of the issues that were prevailing and that were the cause of the indifference between the investor and the farmers, we'll expect that we should be able to get the project going on.
All right. Yeah. Of course, I was going to ask you about land, but that has since been clarified that it is between the county government and the project. So I'll take some closing remarks from you.
Well, let me first of all say on the issue of land, I just want to add that not only is the land between the county government and the project, it's very sparsely populated. Most of the inhabitants of the location of the site are pastoralists who still have access to the land, even as we continue to generate power from that 40,000 acres in total, the site project. And I think it's important to understand that. I think for me, closing remarks, just to say that we're looking forward. The project is still on course. We've got over 30 turbines up right now. There will be a total of 365 turbines by about this time next year. And when this actually is commissioned fully by June 2016, not only will it be the largest wind power project on the continent, but it will be a demonstration that in this part of the world, and there's been a lot of doubters in the past, a project of this magnitude and complexity can be structured successfully and implemented successfully. And I think beyond generation of power and the various benefits to the inhabitants of Marsabit County, the signal that will send, that will allow other similarly complex projects that we need to undertake in this country and a region to potential investors and financiers will be very, very strong.
All right, your final words, please.
Thank you, Terry. Yes. Our 5,000 megawatt project, I know in the minds of Kenyans there is a question, is are we on course? Yes, we are. Lake Turkana is one of the power plants that will contribute to the 5,000 megawatt project. In power system, it is very important to balance the demand and the supply. If you oversupply, then you incur higher costs, and therefore you will not be able to drive the cost of power down. So the program is still on, but we have to move at a speed that is dictated by the demand that is coming up. So we want to assure Kenyans that we have seen the benefits of these 5,000 megawatts. One, we have got adequate power. The price has come down, which was really the major objective. The foundation of the 5,000 megawatts was more about the price than anything else. And then, of course, the adequacy of power. In the past, you will remember that when we don't have sufficient lanes, we always used to have to do rationing. An exercise which was very painful to consumers, whether they are industrial, whether they are homes, whether it's children who are studying and they are interrupted at night. It was very painful. And you'll remember, for the last 3 years, we have not had any power ration. So the program is still on. We are seeing the benefits of that program by having adequate power and also by having a reduction in the price of electricity. And we are very determined to sustain the momentum so that at the end of the day, we will reach the objective of reducing power to about 10 US cents per kilowatt hour.
All right, thank you so much, Mugo Kibati, Chairman, Lake Turkana Wind Power Project, and Engineer Joseph Njoroge, Principal Secretary, Ministry of Energy. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you, Terry.